Hello and welcome to this episode of Hospitality Talks. Thank you so much for continuing to join us for these interviews. Today I am joined by Adam Harwood, who is Head of Learning and Development for D&D London. Adam, thank you so much for giving me your time today. Do you want to just introduce yourself and of course D&D London to anyone out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Adam, I'm head of L&D, which is learning and development, which essentially means supporting the development and the training for all employees across learning and development. So what that would usually involve is things like onboarding, so getting new starters up to speed, management development, like getting new managers used to their role, skills training, apprenticeships, young talent, all that sort of stuff. But obviously with what we've experienced over the last few months has changed that dramatically. My role has shifted somewhat, but I'll probably get into that a little bit later. But in terms of D&D, we are a collection of 43 independent restaurants and one hotel. We're based in London, Manchester, Leeds, Paris, New York, and as of September, Bristol as well. The thing about D&D, which makes us slightly different, is we're not a chain. All our venues are very individual, bespoke concepts. I'll drop a few in that you might have heard of. 20 Stories in Manchester, 14 Hills, London, got Bluebird, Angler, which is our Michelin star, German Gymnasium, and the iconic 100 Wardour Street. So there's a few of them there that you may have come across or even been in before, Katie.
Of course I have. I've whiled away many an hour in the Bluebird
Nice.
and in 100 Wardour Street and German Gymnasium. The outside area there has seen more than a glass or two of champagne down by myself.
Very good.
Adam, we've spoken quite a lot throughout this pandemic situation, and we last spoke in May. With a collection of restaurants, where were you and what was your role at that stage? And then what have you done since May and where do we sit now?
Yeah.
Good question. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm breaking up in my mind. Where were we in May? We were still very much uncertain of what reopening looked like at that point. You know, I think we're probably still waiting on the government guidance to support the training that would help us. Support the training that we could put together to help our staff. But in terms of like what were we doing in May, I think it was all about communication and making sure that our staff were updated, they knew what was going on, because that was the business critical thing at that point, which was making sure that your staff knew, like, it was a new experience for everyone. Very, very, like, it was a scary time. And I think that people had lots of questions. So I think the first port of call was keeping people updated. And I think our mind was also on developing training to really get people prepared for this, this next phase, really. And that was also quite a big thing for us, because we knew that it wasn't just a case of, hey, your restaurant's reopened, you now go back and work is normal. Nothing was normal. Even traveling to work wasn't normal. The restaurants were anything but normal. So we had to really kind of up our game in terms of like how we focused on training our staff. And that was probably where my head was at in May, around that sort of mark.
So what else did you do? I mean, obviously learning and development, communication is obviously a big part of your role. How did you communicate with your staff and what were you communicating to them?
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I'm really proud of over, looking back on last year was a week after lockdown, the first lockdown from around March at a time, we launched a platform. We named D&D Connect, which essentially gave us an opportunity to create digital resources that we were using to support and guide people through basically through the questions they had, so we didn't want to lose them to Google. We didn't want to go on Google and like, how do I, what do I need to know or anything like that. We wanted to basically tell our people that if you are going to one place for information, it's here. And the idea was that we would update it and it would provide consistent, trustworthy, and really contextually specific stuff for D&D. And a lot of it included things like Q&As, business updates, volunteering opportunities, health and wellness, financial advice, emotional support, all of that sort of stuff. And that was really good because it gave our staff somewhere to go to that they could trust and they relied on and they would keep coming back to. I think another thing that I really liked, and it was a shift that was pretty more organic rather than anything that was forced, was a lot of staff started to get involved, you know, and contribute to the platform as well, which was excellent. It was like everything from our CEO, you know, doing briefings and sharing a message to the staff, from our staff themselves on the front line sharing their stories of how they were volunteering, and then you had staff also sharing knowledge of each other. So you had, like, for example, like we had our GM that was doing fitness tutorials. We had like we had wine, well, it wasn't wine tasting, it was wine knowledge that was presented by one of our wine managers. So it was all very kind of like organic. But I think that the lesson for me was, like, you know, give it, you know, this tool, the platform, should I say, was the moment we kind of put it in the hands of our people and they started to get involved. I think it created a really nice spirit and community around a quite not a very nice time for a lot of people. So I feel like it was something that we are continuing to drive. It's not just like a one and done solution that's now wrapped up. We are continuing to update and use it as a way to communicate to our people, because of course lockdowns continued, so we've continued to try and update people as we go through this.
Yeah, and presumably, of course, you know, the hospitality is such a social industry, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
and if you can't be in the same room with people, to have that way to connect that feels like you're still almost socializing or almost sort of joint learning,
Yeah.
then I guess that's really important. And so that's something that's still going on. Do you think you'll continue that when you come out of this latest lockdown?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't say how many people will want to get involved with like cook-alongs when we're out of lockdown, but I know that,
When they're
you know,
back in restaurant kitchens cooking themselves,
yeah,
no.
exactly. I think that the one thing it showed me is, first of all, like, you know, D&D as a business, I don't think when lockdown happened, had we not had like a platform that allowed us to do this, it would have been really difficult. Because as you said, Katie, I think that, you know, the way that we were set up before, a lot of our key messages that were, you know, that we wanted to share with teams, given that we have all those restaurants, a lot of them were just cascaded through managers. So it wasn't like, you know, we didn't have a digital platform or anything like that before, you know, but now we have. I think that, you know, our CEO, for example, the one that great thing that he's done, he's now taken this and he does a monthly update. And, you know, he never really used to communicate with staff on a level like that. Whereas now it feels like we've taken the adopted the technology and really driving it forward, which is great. I think it also definitely maybe promotes a bigger conversation around, you know, how we use tech in hospitality itself, because I think there's probably lots of examples where I thought when we launched this that our staff weren't going to go for it. I thought that we'd get a few hits and that would be it, but it was really well received. The adoption rate is still very, very strong, and I think that the trust you can have is putting something out there, getting your staff to get involved in it, and people will keep on, you know, if you're being where they are, which is probably on their phone, scrolling, looking at things, then you're going to get the hits, you're going to get your eyes on it. And I think sometimes we underestimate that in hospitality, that we've got a young workforce that are probably very tech savvy anyway, that will probably be on their phone and wanting to get the answers quickly, and that's what we gave them. So I think that part of it will definitely continue for sure.
Looking ahead to reopening, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I say that sentence over the
I
last
know.
10 months, reopening, closing, reopening, closing. Looking ahead to reopening, what does your role for, you know, learning and development look like, and what are the plans?
Well, I think when I look back at the first, you know, Super Saturday, when it was in July and we reopened,
Yeah.
yeah, that was, you know, that optimistic time that we look back on now. What we did that time round was we did like so many webinars, and we basically asked each general manager to present a webinar to their team. So it was very kind of specific to that site and specific to the staff. I think we'd probably do something similar. So we're preparing people. So I think the idea was that managers would host the webinar, myself and the head of safety would be on there supporting that manager, and the manager would then present information in terms of what the staff can expect when they come back to their site. So I think the webinars, and I think a lot of the prep and organisation of that would fall on me. Likewise as well, I think there will be more the changes that come. You know, obviously we've done a lot of training preparing people for you know, going back to their restaurants after the first lockdown. And we've done a lot of refreshers and changed it as the COVID procedures have changed. But I think they're going to change again. So I think that what we'd probably do is create online content that will be really specific to D&D, and get our people to go through that before they start. Because I think there's, you know, people have been out of the business now for a long time, and I think that we're gonna have to have a good refresh and remind people that, once again, Katie, is like that thing we talked about earlier, is the mindset thing. It's coming back with a new mindset of, right now you're back at work, it isn't just like it was before, it's different again, and just keeping people in check to make sure that they come back and they are firing all cylinders, and, you know, rather than coming back and not really knowing what to do or how to do it. So,
and it's amazing, really, when you think about it, how resilient we are, because you know, the reopening, closing, the tier system, and yet, you know, we just, you know, every member of hospitality staff that I've ever spoken to over the last 10 months, you know, you just get hit by something, you get back up, you carry on going, you learn a new way of doing something, then you learn another new way of doing something. And I'm constantly amazed by how people can change those habits and change how they work. What can often be, thank you UK government, the drop of a hat. So, okay, well, are you feeling positive? You know, I like to finish on a positive note if I can. So please tell me, are you feeling positive about this latest reopening? Do you feel that D&D London are ready for it? And do you feel like the industry's ready for it? And then finally, do you think that it's going to be a success when it does happen, hopefully in April?
I'm feeling positive. I think, just to pick up on your, you know, resilience, the last message our CEO put out described it as going like 12 rounds with Auntie Joshua. You know, that's what it feels like. You're going to get knocked down, get back up again. And I honestly think I've been so impressed. I mean, I've worked in different industries before, like banking and fashion before, and now coming into hospitality, I've never known an industry as strong and as agile and responsive as this industry. So yeah, I do feel positive. And I think that, you know, I think we were ready before, so there's absolutely no reason why we can't be ready again. And I think the one thing that I'm really hopeful about, and also quite excited about, is the fact that I think when we open again, we're not going to close. And when we do open, people have got like disposable income, and they will want to spend it, and they're going to come and they're going to go on all the events. They're going to, you know, eat loads of food, and we're going to be busy forever. So that's my hopefully my last positive, optimistic note to leave on.
Fantastic. Well, in that case, I'll have to come in the back door and try and get a table from you then, if you think it's
yes, yeah, absolutely.
everywhere. Thank you, Adam. That was really, really interesting. Great to have you on. We haven't had somebody with the sort of learning development experience that you've got, so it's really good to see it from that point of view. So, Adam Harwood, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Katie. Cheers.